Yeah, I want to talk about one thing and then we'll jump into the game, just because I've been thinking on this for the last couple days, um, and a few people have been asking me about my thoughts on it in general. So why not take an opportunity to kind of unpack it a little bit and give a more, it's not a complete breakdown of my thoughts, but a more nuanced discussion of my thoughts considering this. So, take it for what it is. Tune out for the next 5-10 minutes if you want. Come back for Earthbound. But yeah, most of you have probably heard about this at this point, that Meta is effectively rolling back some of its protections in the name of free speech, blah, 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 blah. We don't need to run through the entire article. Again, most of you have heard it. The short and dirty version of this is that Meta, being Mark Zuckerberg, over Facebook, Instagram, Threads, basically anything that Mark Zuckerberg has his grubby fingers in, they are allowing more, as this website says, dehumanizing language to be permitted on their sites. So, I want to dig into like some of the specifics and the examples, and then just kind of give my thoughts, and then we're going to move right on. So they did it this week. One change Meta made this week is to eliminate restrictions on some attacks on immigrants, women, and transgender people. Specifically, its hateful conduct policy now allows allegations of mental illness or abnormality when based on gender or sexual orientation, given political and religious discourse about transgenderism and homosexuality, and common non-serious usage of words like weird. Meta's long supplemented its public community standards with non-public guidelines that it shares with employees and contractors charged with enforcing its policies. The guidelines give moderators examples of what is and is not allowed. So, here are concrete examples from within Meta of what some of that stuff looks like. In an answer to the question, do insults about mental illness and abnormality violate when targeting people on the basis of gender or sexual orientation? Meta now answers no. Gave the following examples of posts that do not violate its policies. Non-violating, boys are weird, trans people aren't real, they're mentally ill, gays are not normal, women are crazy, trans people are freaks. It does not take a genius to recognize that some of these things are not said with the same demeanor, with the same pointed direction, with the same intent. Saying boys are weird. Boys are weird, 14-year-old girl. Boys are weird. Why are boys like this? That kind of thing. Women are crazy. Bitches be shopping, right? Okay. 2 of those statements you can read out of the gate and accept that as non-serious language.
What is this, caca?
Fair. Gays are not normal. Trans people are freaks. Trans people aren't real. They're mentally ill. Yeah, those don't quite carry the same connotation, do they? Anyway, and in follow-up questions about whether denying that a protected class violates a hateful content policy, Meta also answers no. It gave these as examples of posts that are now allowed on Facebook and Instagram. There's no such thing as trans children. God created 2 genders. Transgender people are not a real thing. This whole non-binary thing is made up. Those people don't exist. They're just in need of some therapy. A trans woman isn't a woman, it's a pathetic, confused man. A trans person isn't a he or she, it's an it. So yeah, we don't really need to read too deeply into the rest of this. You get the general idea. Now, I'm not here for a diatribe. I'm not here to go off on Facebook, on Instagram, on Threads, on Meta, on anybody else. Here's basically where I land on the topic. Who on Facebook, who on Instagram, who on Threads hasn't been used to this level of discourse already? Genuine question. Because if you haven't, you soon will. And that's not even a question directed specifically at queer people, at trans people, at anybody in particular. Like, this stuff exists. It's the internet. Of course it exists. This level of dialogue, this type of rhetoric is everywhere on the internet, Meta notwithstanding. Question number 2. For those of you that are, in some form or function, queer, be that your gender identity, your sexuality, whatever, how many of you have genuinely felt protected by platforms like Meta or anybody else when this sort of dialogue starts? Genuine question. How many of you have felt protected by that? I'd be willing to bet it's a minority. And I'm not talking about the bare minimum of minority being 49%. I mean, I would be willing to bet that if I put that poll out to 100, 1,000, whatever number of queer people specifically, odds are you're going to say, no, I have not felt protected by whatever policies exist. You know why? Because the stuff still gets through. Because it still happens. It happens on a daily basis. I know that we joke a bunch about Sammy and her DMs and the Thursday. Genuinely, have a look at the wide variety of people and messages that come my way. And you'll see why I largely ignore messages from people that I don't know anymore. Go on my YouTube channel, read through some of the comments section. Stay on this Twitch channel long enough, eventually somebody's gonna come in here and say, oh, you'd never be a real woman. This stuff exists. It's pervasive. It's everywhere. And it's not going anywhere. Because even when you do attempt to report somebody for this, guess what happens? Many instances, the platform is going to come back and say, we have not found that this person's content violates any of our community guidelines. It is what it is. And so at a certain point, you get frustrated and you stop reporting it. You tune it out. You ignore it. That's what happens. And that's pretty much where we are at this point. The stuff exists. We ignore it. I'm not going to say that's the best path forward. I'm just saying that's the reality of where we are right now. So I guess when people are asking me, are you going to get off Meta platforms? Are you going to get off Instagram? Are you going to get off Threads? Are you going to get off everything? Like, probably not, honestly. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One being effectively what I just said. I've been used to it for years and years and years at this point. Okay? You can't spook me off the platform by threatening me with, oh, they're going to say mean things to you on the internet. They're just standing there menacingly. Come on. It's the internet. Exist as a queer person on the internet for a day. You'll understand. So, no, I'm not going anywhere. Partially because of that. This is just status quo. Bold of Meta to admit that this is their policy going forward and they're just cool with it. But, you know, I'm also used to large corporations being very performative in their allyship and their support of queer people everywhere. You know, thanks for Pride Month, I guess. Thanks for turning your logo rainbow for 30 days out of a year. And then, you know, doing stuff like this. Does teach you kind of who is an actual ally and who isn't. But I think the other reason that I'm not going to pull myself off of these platforms is here's the deal. This kind of dialogue is happening. This kind of rhetoric is happening everywhere. And when it happens in places and in spaces where there is no representation of the people it's used to target, that's when it becomes problematic. Genuinely, that's when it becomes problematic. Because when you have people discussing you and people like you and your livelihood and your, as somebody said to me recently, somebody very close, your lifestyle, your choices, when these things are being discussed without you in the room, what do you think is happening? Do you think they're talking about how can we best create an environment for somebody that we don't understand? No. There's not a chance. They're using that as a means to have a siloed conversation to figure out how they can probably do the opposite, how they can figure in more exclusion, how they can figure out more ways to make you feel unwelcome, more ways to demonize you, so on and so forth. So in essence, I'm going to stay on those platforms and I'm going to continue to be stubborn about it because there needs to be somebody representing people like me in those places and spaces. So have at it. You keep throwing your slurs. I'm used to it. For 99% of people, they're not hurtful. I just laugh and I keep on going about my day. Get mad. Take it to your grave. Genuinely. I don't care. Is this a really, really bad decision by Meta? Yes, it is. Because it's very dehumanizing, and it is another political ploy to get in the good graces of Premier Donald Trump in his upcoming second presidency. They want to kiss a little orange ass, and they want to make sure that they're the recipient of all the money, 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 money. As I said earlier, it's a business. It's there to make money. They're going to do what's in their best interest in order to make more money. None of this should be surprising. It shouldn't be. So, yeah, that's pretty much where I stand on it. I'm not moved by this policy change. It's just another day. It is what it is. We're going to move on. And I don't blame anybody if they do want to pull themselves off of any Meta platform. If it's best for you to get out, then get out. It's not worth your mental health to continue to be around it and to subject yourself to whatever rhetoric that you find incredibly painful. Because it can be. It absolutely can be. But if you're like me, maybe be stubborn. Maybe stick around. Maybe force other people to see you. Force yourself to be visible. And remind them that they don't actually have any power over you. That's all.